She despised humans, but then she fell in love with one. Kylira stared out of the window of the command ship, her green eyes tracing the stars as they streaked past at faster than light speed. She did not like humans. She had never liked humans. From the moment she had been old enough to understand the stories of her people, she had been told that humans were dangerous, reckless, and selfish. Her teachers, her parents, and even her friends had warned her to never trust a human. She had learned to despise them without ever meeting one. The empire she served had decided to form an alliance with the human colonies in this part of the galaxy. Kylira had been assigned as the lead officer for the mission, a position that gave her authority over all alien personnel, including those who would be working directly with humans. She did not like it. She did not like them, and she did not like having to work with them. The briefing room was cold, and the human officers looked tense. Kylira had already noticed the way they moved, the way they spoke, and the strange habits they had. They seemed careless and disorganized. When she saw Ethan Cole for the first time standing quietly near the back, she immediately assumed he was weak. He was tall, not very muscular, with messy brown hair, and a calm, almost shy way of speaking. He did not look like someone who could survive a mission in space. He did not look like someone she could respect. "Kylira!" her superior said, his voice echoing slightly in the metallic room. "You will be working with the human officers to complete this operation. I expect full cooperation." Kylira bowed slightly, hiding her disgust. She said nothing. She had learned early that words were not as important as action. She would do her job, but she would not like it. The humans were strange. They laughed too loudly. They argued too much, and they seemed to underestimate danger. Kylira watched them during training exercises, and she found herself rolling her eyes more than once. Ethan, however, was quiet. He followed orders carefully, fixed problems as they appeared, and rarely spoke unless necessary. Kylira found his calmness irritating at first. It was unnatural, she thought. Nothing human could be that careful, that precise. They trained for weeks, moving between simulations, survival exercises, and spaceship maintenance. Kylira stayed focused on her own work, correcting mistakes, issuing commands, and avoiding contact whenever possible. The other humans noticed her coldness, but they did not understand it. Ethan noticed it, though, and he said nothing. He simply kept working, fixing equipment, and making sure everything ran smoothly. Kylira watched him sometimes, annoyed at how unshakable he seemed. Then came the first real test. A supply transport ship had gone missing near the edge of the Empire's territory. Kylira and the human team were sent to investigate. They were traveling in small shuttles, equipped for survival on hostile planets, and ready for combat if necessary. Kylira felt a sense of duty, but also a tight knot of anger. She hated the idea of working with humans, even as she knew this mission could be dangerous. The shuttle landed on a rocky, barren moon. The surface was cold and uneven, with jagged cliffs and deep craters. Kylira stepped out carefully, scanning the horizon. Ethan followed, carrying a small toolkit and a pack of supplies. He moved quietly, efficiently, with a sense of purpose that made Kylira feel uncomfortable. She was not used to humans who could be so careful. They found signs of the missing transport almost immediately. Scorch marks on the ground, scattered equipment, and a trail leading toward a canyon. Kylira's instincts screamed that this was dangerous, but she did not hesitate. She moved ahead, scanning for threats, her hand resting near her weapon. Ethan stayed behind her, quietly checking the equipment she had overlooked. She noticed him, annoyed at how calm he remained while she was tense and alert. As they moved deeper into the canyon, the wind picked up, carrying with it strange, sharp sounds. Kylira's heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. Ethan adjusted the sensors on his pack and called out to her, pointing towards something in the shadows. She frowned, realizing that the missing crew had left tracks here, and they were fresh. Someone or something had passed through recently. Kylira felt the familiar sting of suspicion. Humans, she reminded herself, were unpredictable. Anyone could betray the other at any moment. They followed the tracks for hours. Kyalira noticed how Ethan watched her, always aware of her position, always ready to act. He did not speak much, but he made small gestures to keep them safe. He checked the edges of cliffs, tested the stability of rocks, and kept a careful eye on the weather. Kyalira found herself growing annoyed, not at his actions, but at the way they worked. It was almost considerate. She did not like feeling that someone was thinking of her. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them shifted. A rock slide thundered down from above, and Kyalira barely had time to react. She dove to the side as rocks crashed around her. A boulder pinned her leg, and pain shot up her body. She tried to move, but it was stuck fast. Panic rose in her chest. She had survived many battles, but she was not used to being helpless. Ethan reacted instantly. He ran to her side, scanning the rock, looking for a way to lift it. "Hold still," he said calmly. "I'll get you out!" Kyalira gritted her teeth, resisting the urge to yell. She did not want help. She did not want to rely on a human. But she could not move the rock herself. Ethan worked quickly, using tools from his pack, wedging and levering until the boulder shifted just enough. Kyalira pulled her leg free, limping but alive. "Thank you," she said, her voice tight. She avoided looking at him. He nodded, saying nothing more, just checking her for injuries. He cleaned a cut on her arm, wrapped a bandage, and ensured she could walk. Kyalira's pride flared, but she did not speak of it. She did not need humans to pity her. Yet, as she watched him, she realized something she had never admitted before. This human had saved her life. They camped in the canyon that night, the stars bright above them. Kyalira sat quietly cleaning her weapon, while Ethan prepared food and checked their sensors. She noticed how careful he was, how he considered every small detail to keep them safe. She found herself watching him, feeling a strange mix of frustration and something else she did not understand. Humans were supposed to be reckless and selfish, but he was neither. He was careful, kind, and brave in a quiet way. It annoyed her. As they talked in the firelight, Ethan spoke about his home on Earth, about simple things like gardens, rain, and quiet nights. Kyalira listened, skeptical at first, but slowly she found herself drawn into the conversation. His words were simple, but they carried a weight she did not expect. Humans, she had been told, were only dangerous. Yet here was a human who seemed good. The next day, they continued their search, and Kyalira began to notice other things. Ethan never sought praise. He never acted superior. He simply did his job and helped others when he could. He shared his food, checked the alien equipment she had been assigned to operate, and even offered small advice when she struggled. Kyalira found herself relying on him more than she wanted. They found the wreckage of the missing transport after 2 days. The crew was alive, but trapped inside the broken hull. Kyalira and Ethan worked together to free them. Kyalira realized that without Ethan's careful hands, many of the humans would have been lost. She could not deny it. He had saved them all. That night, as they camped near the wreckage, Kyalira stared at the stars again. She thought of her people, her training, and everything she had been taught about humans. She realized, with a mix of fear and frustration, that she might have been wrong. Perhaps not all humans were reckless, selfish, or untrustworthy. Perhaps there were exceptions. Ethan noticed her silence, but did not comment. He simply handed her a small cup of water. She took it, meeting his calm brown eyes for a moment, then looked away. She did not trust herself to speak. She had been taught to hate, but she was beginning to feel something unfamiliar. Curiosity, respect, and even a strange sense of admiration. The canyon was quiet, except for the wind and the distant calls of alien creatures. Kyalira felt the tension in her body slowly ease. She had survived, and she had survived with the help of a human. She hated to admit it, but she owed her life to him, and that was a thought she would carry with her, whether she liked it or not. The mission was not over. The galaxy was full of danger, and Kyalira knew there would be more battles, more tests of skill, and more opportunities to face humans in ways that would challenge her beliefs. But for the first time, she began to wonder if humans could be more than what she had been told. Perhaps they could even be allies. As she lay beneath the stars, exhausted but alive, Kalira made a silent promise to herself. She would watch Ethan carefully, learn from him, and maybe, just maybe, see what humans were truly capable of. Even if it went against everything she had been taught, even if it confused her, even if she hated it, she would watch, and she would not look away. And for the first time in her life, Kalira felt the stirrings of something she could not name, a strange, uncomfortable, and undeniable curiosity about a human. Kalira woke early, before the sun of the barren moon had even risen. The stars were still bright in the cold sky, and she felt the quiet weight of the night around her. Ethan was already awake, checking the sensors and repairing some of the damaged equipment from the transport wreck. He moved with calm precision, focused, methodical. Kalira watched him for a moment, her chest tightening slightly. She did not like that she was noticing these things. They had agreed to move the crew back to the shuttle camp slowly, making sure everyone was safe. Kalira led the way, scanning the rocky terrain for threats. She had learned to trust her instincts, and they were screaming danger. The canyon was not quiet. Beneath the wind and the rocks shifting, she sensed movement. Predators, perhaps! Scavengers drawn to the wreckage! Whatever it was, it could strike at any moment. We need to keep them together, she said, her voice low. Ethan nodded and gestured for the crew to follow closely. Kalira felt a strange pride in how he handled them. He spoke softly to the humans, giving instructions without shouting. He comforted the injured without fuss. He was careful, but he was also brave. It annoyed her. She did not like humans, who were brave and calm at the same time. As they moved, Kalira noticed Ethan scanning the cliffs above them. He seemed aware of every shadow, every rock that could fall, every crevice where danger could hide. Kalira had always believed that humans were careless, but this one was not. He was careful, alert, and prepared. She found herself glancing at him more often than she wanted to. The first sign of trouble came when one of the crew, a young human woman named Lily, slipped on a loose rock. She screamed as she fell toward a narrow ravine. Kalira fired her weapon, keeping the creature at bay, but it was relentless. She realized that without Ethan, the crew would have been torn apart. He was everywhere at once, moving calmly, directing the humans, protecting them. She could not believe it. A human was keeping them alive. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, the creature retreated, startled by their combined efforts. Kalira's hand shook, her chest heaving. Ethan checked on the crew, making sure everyone was safe. He came to her, his calm brown eyes meeting hers. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Kalira felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say yes, but the truth was she was not okay. She swallowed hard. "I am," she said, forcing the words out. She did not want to admit that she had relied on him, that she had almost died if not for his quick thinking. Ethan nodded, accepting her words at face value, but she could see the quiet understanding in his eyes. He did not judge her, did not lecture her, did not praise her. He simply acknowledged her presence, her effort, her survival. It was simple, human, and honest. As they reached the plateau, the crew finally rested. Kalira sat apart, cleaning her weapon and observing the humans. They were tired, scared, but alive. Ethan moved quietly among them, helping those who were injured, offering water and checking the equipment. Kalira's gaze lingered on him, and she realized that he had become the center of her attention, without her permission. That night, they camped on the plateau. Kalira stayed awake for hours, staring at the stars. She thought about the stories of humans she had been taught, about their supposed recklessness and selfishness. She thought about Ethan, about his bravery, his calmness, and his quiet care for others. She could not reconcile the two images. Humans, she realized reluctantly, could be more than what she had been taught. Some could even be good. Ethan noticed her silence but did not push. He sat nearby, repairing some broken sensors and occasionally offering her water or food. Kalira accepted without speaking. She hated that she needed him, that she felt comforted by his presence. She had been trained to be independent, strong, and unyielding. Yet here she was, relying on a human, feeling emotions she did not understand. Over the next few days, their journey continued. The crew grew stronger, more coordinated. But Kalira noticed a change in herself. She found herself watching Ethan more than she wanted. She noticed the way he moved, how he spoke, how he treated others. She felt something stirring inside her, a mix of curiosity, respect, and something she could not name. She hated that she was thinking about him in this way. She hated that she cared. One afternoon, they reached a narrow valley where the terrain was unstable. Kalira led the way, but the ground gave way beneath her feet. She slipped, and her arm caught on a jagged rock. Pain shot through her, and she cried out. Ethan was immediately there, supporting her, checking for injuries. "Hold still," he said calmly. "I've got you." She tried to pull away, embarrassed, but he held her steady, moving her carefully to safety. She felt her face flush, not just from pain, but from the attention. Humans were not supposed to care so much for aliens, especially ones like her. Yet he did. He did, and she could not deny it. "Thank you," she muttered, her voice tight. She avoided looking at him. Ethan nodded, offering her a small smile. "We need to keep moving," he said simply. He did not praise her, did not lecture her. He just helped her because it was the right thing to do. Kalira felt something strange, something warm and unfamiliar. She hated it, but she could not ignore it. As they set up camp that night, Kalira reflected on the days they had spent together. She had seen humans in their worst moments, frightened, desperate, even reckless. She had also seen them in their best moments, brave, caring, and willing to risk everything for others. Ethan embodied that, she realized, and it made her question everything she had believed. She hated humans. She had always hated humans. But now, she found herself thinking about one human constantly. His calm presence, his bravery, his quiet kindness. She hated that she was drawn to him, that she relied on him, that she felt something unfamiliar and confusing when he was near. And yet, she could not deny it. She watched him as he repaired the sensors, helped the crew, and prepared their camp. She realized that her feelings were changing. She could not hate him. She could not ignore him. She could not turn away from the truth. She was beginning to care. The next morning, Kalira and Ethan led the crew down the valley. The journey was still dangerous, but she felt a strange confidence, not in herself, but in him. She trusted him even though she hated that she did. She relied on him even though it went against everything she had been taught. She followed him, watched him, and learned from him. As the days passed, the bond between them grew, silent but strong. Kalira could feel it in the way she watched him, in the way she noticed his actions, and in the way she thought about him even when he was not near. She hated that it was happening, but she could not stop it. She was beginning to understand something new about humans, something that could not be taught, something that had to be experienced. And for the first time in her life, Kalira began to wonder if humans were not all reckless, selfish, or unworthy. Perhaps there were exceptions. Perhaps some humans could be brave, careful, and kind. Perhaps one human could even change the way she thought about her entire species. And she hated herself for thinking it, but she could not deny the truth. She was beginning to trust Ethan Cole, and she was beginning to feel something more than respect. She was beginning to feel something like hope. Kalira woke to the sound of distant rocks shifting. The canyon was alive with strange noises, and the wind carried scents that made her uneasy. Ethan was already awake, checking the sensors and adjusting their small camp. He moved quietly, carefully, as if he could sense danger before it came. Kalira watched him for a moment, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She hated that she cared about him, hated that his presence made her feel something she did not understand. They had decided to move the crew toward a safer area. The canyon they were in was too unstable, too dangerous to stay. Kyalira led the way, scanning the cliffs and the rocks below. Ethan followed closely, helping the injured humans and quietly organizing the group. Kyalira noticed how he gave small instructions to keep everyone together. His calm voice contrasted with the chaos of the canyon. She hated it, but she could not deny that it worked. The journey was long and exhausting. The sun climbed high, turning the rocks into blinding walls of white and gray. The crew struggled with the heat, the rough terrain, and their fear. Kyalira stayed ahead, her eyes sharp, her body tense. She hated that she had to rely on a human to keep them safe, but she did. Without Ethan, they would have been lost long ago. They reached a narrow pass that led to a higher plateau. Kyalira stepped carefully, testing the rocks before she moved. Ethan watched her, moving to support the humans behind him. He checked each step, each loose rock, guiding the crew through the dangerous path. Kyalira felt a strange sense of frustration. She was strong, trained, skilled. She did not need a human to help her, and yet she could not deny that he made the path safer. As they climbed, the wind picked up, howling through the narrow pass. Rocks began to fall from above. Kyalira shouted warnings, but one rock slipped past her senses, striking her shoulder. Pain shot through her, and she stumbled. Ethan was there immediately, steadying her and checking her injury. "Are you hurt badly?" he asked, his voice calm but urgent. Kyalira shook her head. She hated the weakness she felt. "I'm fine," she said, trying to push past the pain. Ethan nodded, not arguing. He helped her adjust her pack and moved her forward carefully. Kyalira realized that she was beginning to rely on him more than she wanted. Every time danger came, every time a mistake happened, he was there. He was careful, brave, and calm in ways she had never seen in a human before. It annoyed her that she admired him. They reached the plateau by midday, and Kyalira allowed the crew a short rest. She found a quiet spot away from the others, leaning against a rock and examining her shoulder. Ethan noticed and came over, holding a small first aid kit. "Let me help," he said simply. She wanted to refuse, wanted to be independent, but the pain made her accept. He cleaned the wound carefully, wrapped it with precision, and checked that she could move without aggravating the injury. Kyalira felt a strange warmth in her chest. She hated it. She hated that she felt comforted by a human's touch. She hated that she wanted him to stay near. "You're stronger than you think," Ethan said quietly. He did not smile, did not tease, did not lecture. He simply spoke, observing her and acknowledging her strength. Kyalira looked away, pretending to focus on the rocks around them. She hated that she wanted to look at him, wanted to hear his voice. The next day, they continued their journey, moving toward a safer location. Kyalira led the way, scanning the terrain, while Ethan stayed close, helping the humans and quietly keeping them on track. The crew was exhausted, but morale was better, with Ethan guiding them. Kyalira noticed that she relied on him for more than protection. She relied on his judgment, his calmness, and his presence. As they crossed a narrow ridge, a loud roar echoed from above. Kyalira froze. She recognized the sound from the previous encounter, and her heart pounded. She signaled the crew to stop, her hand shaking slightly despite her training. Ethan moved to her side, calm and ready. He scanned the cliffs with his sensors and whispered, "Stay low and follow my lead." Kyalira felt a mix of fear and admiration. He was brave, and so careful at the same time. She hated that she trusted him so completely. The creature appeared suddenly, leaping from the cliffs above, its claws scraping the rocks. Kyalira raised her weapon and fired, but the creature was fast. Ethan grabbed a rope, using it to help pull some humans out of danger. He moved with a quiet confidence that saved lives. Kyalira realized that without him, many would have died. After the creature retreated, Kyalira and Ethan helped the crew regroup. She noticed how he did not hesitate, how he prioritized safety and order over pride. Kaelira felt a strange pull in her chest. She hated humans, yet here was one who was more reliable, more brave, and more careful than anyone she had ever known. Over the next few days, Kaelira and Ethan faced more dangers. Loose rocks, sudden storms, and aggressive alien wildlife challenged their journey. Each time, Ethan reacted calmly and carefully. He protected the humans, helped Kaelira, and ensured the crew stayed together. Kaelira began to notice small things about him. The way he always checked everyone's footing, how he spoke quietly to reassure them, the way he never asked for praise. She hated that she admired him, hated that she wanted him to notice her. One evening, as the crew rested, Kaelira found herself sitting near Ethan. The firelight flickered across his face, and she realized how much she had come to depend on him. She hated it. She hated the warmth she felt in his presence, the quiet comfort of knowing he was there. Yet she could not deny it. He was brave, kind, and careful in ways she had never seen before. She could not stop thinking about him. "Are you thinking about the journey?" Ethan asked softly. He looked at her without pressure, simply curious. Kaelira swallowed hard. She had not expected him to notice. She forced herself to nod. "Yes," she said quietly. He smiled faintly. "We'll get through this," he said simply. "Together!" The word together struck something in her chest. She hated the feeling, hated the softness it brought to her mind. Humans were supposed to be selfish, reckless, and weak. Ethan was none of those things. He was strong, careful, and brave. He was kind, patient, and honest. She hated that. She felt drawn to him, that she trusted him, that she wanted him near. The next day they encountered a narrow canyon filled with unstable rocks. Kaelira led the way, scanning for threats, but she slipped on loose gravel. She fell toward the edge of a cliff, and panic surged in her chest. Ethan was immediately there, grabbing her wrist and pulling her to safety. She tried to pull away, embarrassed, but he held her steady. "I've got you," he said calmly. His calmness steadied her racing heart. She felt a strange warmth, a flutter of fear and relief. She hated the feeling, hated that she needed him. But she did. Without him, she might have fallen, and the crew might have been lost. She hated that she owed her life to a human. As they reached a safer area, Kaelira noticed her feelings changing. She had always despised humans, always believed they were dangerous and untrustworthy. Now she realized she was beginning to respect them. More than respect, she was beginning to care. She hated that she felt it, but she could not deny it. Ethan was brave, careful, and kind, and she found herself thinking about him constantly. That night, as they camped, Kaelira sat alone, staring at the stars. She thought about the journey, about the dangers they had faced, and about Ethan. She hated that she was drawn to him, hated that she relied on him, hated that his calm presence comforted her. And yet, she could not stop thinking about him. Over the next days, Kaelira and Ethan continued to face challenges. They crossed rivers, climbed cliffs, and avoided dangerous wildlife. Each time, Ethan was careful, brave, and kind. He guided the humans, helped Kaelira, and ensured their safety. Kaelira began to realize that her hatred of humans was fading, replaced by a growing admiration for one human in particular. She hated that she felt this way. She had been trained to despise humans, to see them as reckless and dangerous. Yet here was Ethan, calm, brave, and kind. He had saved her life more than once, protected the crew, and faced danger without hesitation. She could not ignore the truth. She was beginning to care for him, and she hated that it felt so natural, so easy, so inevitable. She hated that. She trusted him completely, that she relied on him, that she wanted him near. She hated that her feelings were changing, that her beliefs were being challenged. She hated that she was beginning to love a human. And yet, she could not stop it. Kaelira felt the weight of the canyon pressing down on her as they continued their journey. Every step was dangerous. Every rock could shift. Every sound could signal danger. The crew was tired, hungry, and scared. but she could see the determination in their eyes. Ethan moved among them, helping those who struggled, encouraging them quietly, and always watching for danger. Kylira hated how dependable he was, how calm he remained, how much she was beginning to rely on him. They reached a narrow pass that led to a plateau, and Kylira's instincts told her to be cautious. The rocks here were loose, the cliffs sharp, and the wind harsh. She stayed at the front, scanning every inch of the path. Ethan followed closely, his eyes scanning the area as carefully as hers. She noticed how he moved with a quiet confidence, ready for anything, and she hated herself for admiring it. The first sign of trouble came when a sudden quake shook the canyon. Rocks tumbled down the cliffs, sending the crew scrambling for safety. Kylira shouted warnings, her voice tense, but one of the younger humans slipped and began sliding toward a cliff. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing the human and pulling them to safety. Kylira felt a pang of frustration mixed with relief. He was everywhere at once, calm and careful, saving lives without hesitation. She hated that she depended on him. "We need to keep moving," Ethan said, his voice steady. He helped Kylira and the crew navigate the dangerous path. She realized that without him, many of them would have been lost. She hated that she owed him her life. As they moved, Kylira noticed how he checked every human. Every step, every rock. He never rushed, never panicked, never made mistakes. She hated how reliable he was, how brave, how careful. She hated that she wanted him near, that she felt comforted by his presence. They reached a small cave to take shelter from a sudden storm. The wind howled outside, throwing dust and rocks into the canyon. Kylira and Ethan made sure the humans were safe, checking for injuries and securing their gear. Inside the cave it was quiet, except for the sound of the storm and their own breathing. Kylira sat on a rock, her mind racing. She hated humans. She had always hated them. But Ethan was different. He had saved lives, calmed fears, and kept the crew together. She hated that. She admired him. Ethan noticed her silence and sat nearby. He did not speak at first, simply observing her. Kylira felt the tension between them. A strange pull she did not understand. She hated the pull, hated that it made her feel vulnerable, but she could not ignore it. "Kylira," Ethan said finally, his voice gentle, "I know you don't trust humans easily, but we need to rely on each other now." She looked at him, her green eyes narrowing. "I don't rely on humans," she said sharply. "Not all humans are the same," Ethan said softly. "Some of us care. Some of us help. Some of us protect." Kylira felt her heart tighten. She hated that his words were true. She hated that she had already felt his protection, his calm presence, his careful attention. She wanted to argue, to reject him, to push him away, but she could not. She had already begun to trust him, to depend on him, to care. The storm raged outside, and Kylira found herself talking to him in a way she had never spoken to a human before. She told him about her fears, her doubts, her struggles to accept humans as allies. Ethan listened quietly, never judging, never interrupting. He simply acknowledged her words with understanding, and Kylira hated how comforting it was. After the storm passed, they continued their journey. The canyon was dangerous, filled with unstable rocks and hidden predators. Kylira stayed at the front, scanning constantly, while Ethan moved beside her, helping the humans and keeping them safe. She hated that she felt a strange sense of security with him near, hated that his presence calmed her, hated that she wanted him close. Then came the biggest danger yet. A group of hostile aliens ambushed them, emerging from hidden crevices and narrow paths. Kylira's heart raced as she drew her weapon. The humans panicked, some shouting, some frozen with fear. Ethan reacted immediately, positioning himself between the attackers and the crew. He moved with calm precision, directing humans, shielding the injured, and keeping the attackers at bay. Kylira fired her weapon, keeping the aliens at a distance, but she realized quickly that without Ethan, the crew would not survive. She felt a strange mix of admiration and frustration. He was human. He was supposed to be reckless, weak, and untrustworthy. Yet here he was, brave, careful, and protective. She hated how much she depended on him, hated how much she admired him, hated how much she cared. The battle lasted for hours. Kalira and Ethan fought side by side, their movements almost synchronized. She noticed how he anticipated her actions, how he covered her when she focused on other threats, how he never panicked. She hated that she was impressed. She hated that she felt safe with him. Finally, the attackers retreated, driven back by their combined efforts. The crew was shaken but alive. Kalira breathed heavily, her muscles aching, her mind racing. She looked at Ethan, who was checking the humans and ensuring everyone was safe. She hated that she wanted to be near him, hated that she trusted him completely, hated that her heart was beating faster because of him. That night, as they camped near a small river, Kalira found herself alone with Ethan. The others were resting, exhausted from the battle. She wanted to speak, to tell him what she felt, but she was afraid. She had been taught to despise humans, to never trust them fully. Yet she could not deny the truth. She cared for him, deeply. She hated that she felt this way, but she could not stop it. "You did well today," she said finally, her voice quiet. Ethan looked at her, his brown eyes calm. "We did well together," he said simply. Kalira felt a flutter in her chest. Together. The word felt heavy with meaning. She hated it, yet it was true. They had survived because they trusted each other, because they fought together, because they protected each other. She hated that she had to admit it, hated that she depended on him, hated that she liked him. The days that followed were tense and dangerous. They navigated treacherous terrain, avoided predators, and dealt with unstable weather. Each time, Ethan was calm, careful, and protective. Kayala found herself watching him constantly, noting every action, every word, every gesture. She hated that she was drawn to him, hated that she trusted him completely, hated that she wanted him near. One afternoon, a sudden landslide blocked their path. Kalira led the crew, scanning for a safe route. The rocks were unstable, and one misstep could mean disaster. Ethan stayed beside her, guiding the humans, helping her, moving with calm precision. She hated that she needed him, hated that she trusted him, hated that she felt a strange warmth in his presence. They found a narrow pass around the landslide, but the path was steep and dangerous. Kalira went first, testing each step, while Ethan followed closely, ready to catch anyone who slipped. A human stumbled, and Ethan grabbed them before they fell. Kalira realized that without him many lives would have been lost. She hated that she owed him her life, hated that she depended on him, hated that she felt gratitude, respect, and something more. That night, as they camped on a small plateau, Kalira could not sleep. She thought about Ethan, about his bravery, his care, his calm presence. She hated that. She admired him, hated that she wanted him near, hated that she felt emotions she could not name, yet she could not deny the truth. She was falling in love with him. She hated herself for trusting him, for relying on him, and for feeling the warmth that his presence brought. The final leg of their journey required them to cross a narrow bridge over a deep chasm. The bridge was old, fragile, and dangerous. Kalira scanned the structure carefully. One wrong step, and it could collapse. The humans behind her whispered nervously, fear evident in their faces. Ethan moved beside her, checking the structure and guiding the crew with calm confidence. Kalira noticed how his hands stayed steady, how his voice reassured the others, and she hated how much she depended on him. They began to cross the bridge slowly, step by step. Kalira led, her eyes scanning the rocks in the chasm below. Ethan followed closely, supporting the humans and making sure no one fell behind. The wind picked up, whipping around them and making the bridge sway. Kalira felt her pulse quicken, her muscles tense, and her mind alert. Every instinct screamed danger. Suddenly, a section of the bridge cracked under their weight. Kalira shouted a warning, but it was Ethan who reacted first. He grabbed a human who was about to fall, pulling them back to safety. Kalira barely had time to react before another section of the bridge gave way. Rocks and debris fell into the chasm below. She stumbled, her pack catching on the wooden planks. Ethan was there in an instant, steadying her, his calm presence anchoring her in the chaos. "Hold on," he said, his voice steady, reassuring. She felt the warmth of his hand, the strength of his grip, and the comfort of his calmness. She hated herself for feeling safe, hated herself for trusting a human, hated herself for wanting him close. They moved together across the bridge, carefully, step by step. Kaelira noticed how he anticipated dangers before they happened, how he guided the humans, and how he never faltered. She hated how perfect he seemed, how reliable, how brave, and yet she could not deny the truth. She was falling in love with him. When they reached the other side, the crew cheered, relieved, and exhausted. Kaelira took a moment to catch her breath, her eyes scanning the group. Everyone was alive, safe, and together. Ethan looked at her, his calm brown eyes meeting hers. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a pull she could not resist, a connection she could not ignore. "We made it," Ethan said softly. "All of us." Kaelira nodded, unable to speak. She hated how much she wanted to reach out, how much she wanted to be near him, how much she depended on him, yet she could not stop herself. She had seen humans in their worst and best moments, and Ethan was the best she had ever known. Brave, careful, kind, and unwavering. He had changed her, challenged her, and made her feel emotions she had never felt before. The final challenge came when they reached the human base. Kalira's empire had ordered the humans to be detained for questioning, fearing betrayal. The human crew hesitated, uncertain, and scared. Ethan stepped forward calmly, speaking to the alien guards, explaining the situation and protecting the crew. Kaelira watched him, her heart heavy with admiration and frustration. She hated the politics, the orders, and the fear that threatened to tear them apart. She hated that she had come to care so much for a human who might be taken from her. Her superiors arrived, demanding that she enforce the arrest. Kaelira stood silently, torn between duty and the truth she had discovered on this journey. She had been taught to follow orders, to distrust humans, to act without question. Yet everything she had seen, everything she had experienced had taught her a different lesson. Humans could be brave, kind, and trustworthy. Some humans, like Ethan, were worth more than obedience to a flawed command. Kaelira made her choice. She stepped forward, her green eyes blazing with determination. "They are not to be harmed," she said firmly. Her voice echoed through the base. "They have done nothing but survive, help others, and protect each other. I will not allow you to punish them." The guards hesitated, surprised by her defiance. Her superior shouted, demanding obedience, but Kaelira stood her ground. She looked at Ethan, who met her gaze calmly, silently, supporting her choice. She hated that she needed him, hated that she relied on him, hated that she cared about his safety and his presence. Yet she could not deny it. He had changed her, and she could not ignore the truth. Together they protected the crew, ensured their safety, and stood against the orders that sought to punish them. Kaelira felt a strange strength in her chest, a power that came from conviction and the bond she had formed with Ethan. She hated the fear and uncertainty, but she loved the certainty of their connection, the truth of their shared experiences, and the warmth she felt in his presence. When the chaos settled, the crew was safe, and the orders were overridden. Kaelira and Ethan finally had a moment alone. The tension, the danger, and the fear of the past days hung between them, but now there was clarity. She looked at him, her heart beating faster than ever, her emotions raw and unguarded. "I thank you," she said softly, struggling to find the right words. She hated that she sounded vulnerable, hated that she was exposed, hated that she had to admit how much he mattered to her. Ethan smiled faintly, his calm eyes meeting hers. "You don't need to thank me," he said simply. "We survived together. We made it through because we trusted each other." Kaelira felt tears prick her eyes. She hated humans. She had always hated them. And yet here was one human who had taught her more about strength, courage, and kindness than any alien had ever done. She hated that she was falling in love with him, but she could not deny the truth. She cared for him deeply, completely, and without reservation. They left the base together, guiding the crew to safety. Kylira noticed how the humans looked at her, no longer with fear or suspicion, but with gratitude and trust. She realized that her own feelings had changed. She no longer saw humans as reckless or untrustworthy. She saw them as capable, brave, and sometimes extraordinary. And she saw one human, Ethan, as the person who had reshaped her world. As they traveled back toward her empire, Kylira and Ethan walked side by side. She felt a strange peace, a sense of completion, and a bond that could not be broken by orders, politics, or prejudice. She hated the pain and struggle, but she loved the trust, the bravery, and the care that Ethan had shown. She loved him. The journey home was quieter. The crew rested, the danger had passed, and Kylira allowed herself to relax. She noticed the little things about Ethan, the way he moved, the way he spoke, the calm way he handled problems. She hated that she was drawn to him, yet she loved everything about him. One evening, under a sky filled with stars, Kylira finally spoke the truth. "I never wanted to like a human," she said softly. "I never wanted to trust one, but you changed everything." Ethan looked at her, his brown eyes steady and kind. "You don't have to fight it," he said simply. "We survived together. We learned together, and now we can face the future together." Kylira felt a rush of emotion. She hated that she had been afraid, hated that she had doubted, hated that she had resisted. And yet, she could not resist anymore. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Together," she said, echoing his words. From that moment on, Kylira's hatred of humans dissolved, replaced by respect, trust, and love. She had faced danger, challenges, and fear. And through it all, she had learned that humans could be brave, kind, and loyal. One human, Ethan Cole, had shown her the best of what humanity could be. She hated that it took so long to realize it, but she could not deny the truth anymore. She loved him. As they walked back toward safety, guiding the crew and preparing to return to their worlds, Kylira felt a quiet strength inside her. She had chosen love over prejudice, trust over fear, and connection over hatred. She had survived, learned, and grown, and she had found something she had never expected. Someone worth risking everything for. She looked at Ethan, his calm presence beside her, and felt a warmth she had never known. She hated that she had doubted, hated that she had feared, hated that she had resisted. But she loved him, and she knew that together they could face anything. And for the first time in her life, Kylira knew that love, trust, and courage could be stronger than fear, hatred, and prejudice. She had despised humans, but she had fallen in love with one. And that love had changed everything. She hated it. She hated humans. She had been taught to despise them. And yet, here was one human who had changed everything. He had saved lives, protected the crew, calmed fears, and kept them alive. He had shown her kindness, bravery, and patience. And she hated herself for feeling drawn to him, for trusting him, for caring about him. The next day, they reached the edge of the canyon. Beyond it was safer terrain, and the journey would soon end. Kylira felt a mix of relief and sadness. The adventure had been dangerous, exhausting, and terrifying, but it had also changed her. She hated humans, yet she had come to trust one. She hated herself for feeling warmth, admiration, and love. She hated herself for being vulnerable. Ethan noticed her quiet mood and spoke softly. "We're almost there," he said. "You did well. We all did well." Kylira looked at him, her chest tight. "We did well together," she said, echoing his words. She hated the feeling it brought, hated the truth it carried, hated the way her heart responded. As they prepared to leave the canyon, Kylira made a silent promise to herself. She would protect the crew, continue the mission, and survive. She would not let her feelings cloud her judgment. Yet she could not stop thinking about Ethan, could not ignore the way he had changed her, could not deny the strange warmth she felt in his presence. and she hated that she was beginning to love a human. Kailira and Ethan stood at the edge of the canyon, looking out at the safer terrain ahead. The journey had been long, exhausting, and full of danger. The crew was tired, but alive. Kailira felt a mixture of relief and unease. She had survived countless challenges, faced deadly creatures, and navigated treacherous terrain. Yet nothing had tested her like the human at her side. Ethan Cole had saved lives, kept the crew safe, and challenged every belief she had held about humans. Kailira reacted instantly, diving toward her. But it was Ethan who reached her first. He grabbed her wrist, holding her back from the edge, and pulled her to safety. Kailira's pride flared, but also something else, a begrudging respect. Ethan had saved a human from a human mistake. She could not ignore it. "Thank you," Lily said, her voice shaking. Ethan smiled faintly and helped her regain her balance. Kailira felt a strange tightness in her chest. She had been trained to despise humans, but watching Ethan act without hesitation, without thought of reward, made her question everything she had been taught. They continued their journey, the canyon twisting and turning like a maze. Kailira stayed at the front, scanning for threats, while Ethan moved beside her, quietly guiding the crew and checking the environment. She noticed how he adjusted the way he walked, carefully placing his feet to avoid triggering any loose rocks. He was patient, steady, and unshakable. She hated that she was beginning to admire him. By midday, they reached a narrow pass that led to a plateau. The wind howled through the canyon, carrying dust and debris. Kailira felt uneasy. She had learned that danger often came from above, from predators or falling rocks. She scanned the cliffs, her muscles tense. Ethan moved beside her, his calm presence a strange comfort she did not want to acknowledge. Without warning, a shadow moved above them. Kailira's heart leapt, and she reached for her weapon. Rocks fell from the cliffside as a massive creature lunged down at them. It was unlike anything Kailira had seen before. Long limbs, sharp claws, and eyes that glowed in the sunlight. It screeched, and the crew froze in fear. Kailira felt her pulse race. She had trained for this, but fear still ran through her veins. Ethan reacted instantly. He grabbed a nearby rope and tied it to a rock, pulling Lily and another injured crew member to safety.